Hey, welcome to Two Old Geeks Talking. I'm Rob.
I'm Trace.
And I'm Ron.
And today we're discussing tabletop role-playing games. So, the reason we asked Ron to come here, I'm getting tangled up in my cord here, is he's from Kentucky Fried Gaming, right? Avid player, probably been into it as long, if not longer than we have.
That's a long time.
Right? That's a long time.
I started in 1977.
Wow. Because the very first role-playing game was what, 74? Yeah. And that was Dungeons and Dragons.
We probably started in 78 or 79 is when we started.
So we're just going to kind of scratch the surface because it's such a big topic, right?
Yeah.
And in a short amount of phrase, how would you describe role-playing games to people who don't know what role-playing games are?
Role-playing game, and most people have either played a video game that's RPG based. You know, a lot of these open world games, any of the Star Wars, the Skyrim, that's a type of RPG. Even Pokemon, because you're building your trainer up. You take on the persona of a character. Basically, like if you ever played, Cowboys and Indians as a kid. That's aging ourselves because that's what we used to do when we were little. But when you pretend to be somebody, or somebody plays Star Wars, like you pretend to be a Jedi, that's you're role playing in essence because you're taking on the role of that persona. But for pen and paper RPGs, role playing to me, it's more about the social aspect, interacting with friends.
Exactly.
And I have met lifelong friends through this game that are all over the world.
Right.
I mean, it's from Australia, New Zealand, England, Europe, all California, from one coast to the other, Canada, Mexico. It's like there is no limit.
Right.
And that's the thing about RPGs, that it doesn't limit who plays. No matter your age, race, gender, whatever, it does not limit you.
There you go.
Everybody's welcome.
Yeah, we really started when we were kids, and really pre-video games, to be honest with you. I think we had that in television, but the graphics hadn't really reached today, and it really wasn't open world role-playing games at the time. And so we had the little, this was our first Monster manual, which I think come out in '79.
Right.
And so I can just remember combing through this thing as a kid and reading all the stats of all the monsters, and it just kind of give you, it kind of strengthen your imagination as a kid.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that may be lacking in some kids today is. Whereas if you were the dungeon master, or even if you were a player, you were involved in the story. Whereas now, lots of times when you play a game, everything's prearranged, and you don't use as much imagination as you used to.
Well, as far as the social thing, I know we played in the basement, right, as kids. But it wasn't until I got to college and I came across a group that was playing that I actually started working on my social skills. I was a little guy from Anderson County, and I kind of stayed to myself. And when I got with this group, I got to develop a character, and in turn kind of develop my own personality in a way. And I think that's the great thing about role-playing games, is it gives younger people an imagination to grow, to try things that they wouldn't try. Like when I was a kid, the first smart remark I ever made to my father was when I had a puppet on my hand. It was the puppet that done it, not me. But when you're doing role playing, you can actually be something or do something that you wouldn't actually do personally.
And I've played, like, for example, some of my first characters early, they were female.
There you go.
Or they, you think about, okay, you're playing an elf. Well, that's a different race.
Right.
That's not you. If you're playing a human, well, then you're playing you. If you're playing an elf, a dwarf, a drow is a black-skinned elf.
Right.
So people don't think about those things. Now, I have played games where people have incorporated in that, because you played that different race, that you run into, racism.
Right.
Because like dwarves hate elves, elves hate dwarves. Not in my world, but
It's
you know, as a given thing, you know, just like in Lord of the Rings, for example, you know, the dwarves and elves were like, they didn't like each other.
Right.
But you saw that those two became friends by the end of the journey, you know, and that's what it shows. It shows that, you know, you can be that person. You know, you can change things.
Teaches growth.
Yeah, it teaches growth, you know, because, and I start my kids as soon as I think they can do the math, and that's another thing that D&D is great with, or any role-playing game, math.
Right.
You know, you don't understand. They don't get it at first. They're like, wait a minute, I'm doing math, but it's math they enjoy.
Right.
You know, when they got to start adding that stuff up.
Now, Vince, we're talking about younger people. What is the challenges with playing with an adult versus a younger group of people?
The first challenge is patience. You have to understand
Right.
that, you know, they're not going to get it right off the bat. You may have to explain it 3-4 times. Now, some are going to click
Right.
immediately. Some are not. And I've noticed that it's more prevalent with kids that if one doesn't understand and the other does, that they usually jump in and try to help each other. And I've noticed it less in adults. They'll just sit back and like, okay, well, I'll wait till the DM explains it to them and see, you know, and then if they still not getting it, then somebody may jump in to try to explain something, say, well, this is how I understood it.
Right.
You know, but with kids, and also, you know, I've played in games that were, you know, you have to age appropriate the game. You know there's going to be violence.
Right.
But if you're doing descriptive GMing, you know, you don't have to describe that, you know, you cut its head off, blood flies everywhere, you know, just say, okay, you killed him, move on.
Right. Right.
Well, have you ever had to deal with either a short attention span or a kid being unruly or not getting...
That's it. Unruly kids, usually the other kids fix that. Because they're like, I can't hear, be quiet.
Right.
You know, and usually when the other kids correct them as opposed to the adult,
Right.
you know, they'll look up and then a lot of times they'll be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You know, but attention spans, yeah, you have to understand that the attention spans, you know, you need shorter games. I would say if you're starting out kids, you know, I started my kids 7, 8 years old.
Right.
They were good for about 2 hours max. And you know, if you kept it
That's
action,
good.
action,
2 hours is good.
But you got to keep action and keep them involved. That's the thing. You've got to keep them involved. Like if you're, I mean, anybody that's role played knows. Okay, this is my turn. Okay, next, and then you sit there until it comes back around to you.
Right.
Well, with kids, I try to give them something to do, and I even adjust the rules sometimes. And I tell them, I say, you know, I'm going to adjust this and make this so that, you know, you have something to do all the time. And that's what I like what they've done with 5th edition. They've got reactionary or, you know, stuff that happens like if somebody attacks you, well, you can react. You know, there's things that you can do even when it's not your turn.
Yeah.
You know, and that has helped a lot of that. But, I mean, an intro game, half hour to an hour max for younger kids. I mean,
Okay.
even for adults, I would say an hour max for an introduction game to get them into it and going so that that gives you plenty of time to explain the rules, run them through a couple of scenarios, and be done. But
Did you have something you wanted to add? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh no,
You're
no,
fine, you're
no,
fine,
no,
you're fine.
no,
I
you're
just know
fine.
there's
Just,
certain
I just,
topics
I
I
I
just.
could sit here and ramble on for
Right.
hours.
Oh no, that's good. That's good. That's why we wanted you on here. But I mean, I can remember when we were kids, and you know, and we played, and you get attached to those characters.
Oh.
And then when one of them passes away, like when Matthew, our little brother, he had a character called Templum. He was like a barbarian, and he got a bad roll one time, and Templum didn't make it through the adventure, you know. And man, he was really upset. As a dungeon master, I stepped in. I said, well, I didn't know, but you know, Templum had an older brother at home, and he was even tougher and more rugged than Templum, and we need to go tell his family what's going on, and you could start playing this other character. And so then I eased things up for him a little bit.
Yeah, the early editions of D&D were deadly.
Yeah.
Don't get attached.
Yeah,
It's
right.
kind of like watching Game of Thrones. Don't get attached.
Yeah, right.
You know,
right.
and that you know, it's. But that's the one. That's if I have a gripe about 5th edition, that would be it. Is that character deaths is, if you play it by the written rule,
Yeah.
are very rare.
Yeah. Okay. I see.
Okay.
Yeah. and
Because
so-
you get what they call death saves, and
Yeah.
you make these death saves. Now, I saw a thing. I'm watching a series of videos by. Anyway, it's Deborah. She played in Daredevil, and anyway, she's DMing and stuff, and she said she's changing it to where if you make your first death save, you get, some kind of a lasting injury.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Penalty.
A penalty.
Yeah.
And if you fail 2 death saves, well, that's going to be a more permanent.
Yeah, that's a
injury.
good idea.
You know,
That
like-
way the game
like
has
you have
consequences.
a limp now, which reduces your speed by 5
Yeah,
feet.
yeah.
Or something like that.
Okay.
And of course, if you fail 3, you're dead.
And that
So-
makes it
but-
more realistic.
But that makes it more realistic,
Right.
and it makes it that because I've always had them say, hey, I'd rather them say there he goes than there he lays.
Right.
They don't have to
Right.
fight everything.
Right.
Nagari. That
you
was
know,
my guy that died.
you
No
know,
Yeah.
one remembers Nagari.
I can't. I've got a box full of dead characters.
Yeah,
And what I do
yeah.
is when one dies, it becomes an NPC.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Because it's already fleshed out. You
Right.
know the character.
Right.
So you just make it an NPC. I've had, I'm right now. I run my wife, my son, and my daughter through a campaign, and they're in the Dungeon of the Mad Mage right now, and it's deadly. They've already fought the Death Tyrant and the Fire Giant there, but.
Now, when during COVID, did you like I've got a friend of mine, Andrew, and he started playing again after years, and he plays with a group cross country on
Yeah,
Zoom.
virtual. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did some of
Yeah,
that. I
yeah,
did some of that
yeah.
for. I run games here for the library for the teens, and when we were just really getting into it, COVID,
Right?
and it was like, man. So Grace Wilson here, she got with me, and she runs the youth program. She got with me, and she said, "Can you run some online stuff?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I subscribed to Roll20, bought the adventures and stuff, and we were running through the intro adventure. And it's hard, especially with the
Yeah.
younger.
Yeah.
I could
Even though
make-
you've got
yeah,
the visual
it's not
map
the
and
same.
everything,
Yeah.
it took us almost 3 times as long as it would have if we were sitting in front of each other.
Yeah.
Have you played
And-
now? We were talking mainly D&D, but have any of you guys played anything like I got a friend of mine, Steve, and he was real big into Warhammer, and it was real popular over
Yeah,
in
there's
England.
it's a virtual tabletop game that I got on Steam, and I've played a couple of war games because I'm a big war gamer.
Yeah.
And I've played a couple of games on there, virtual. It's not the same. It's like you lose the social.
Yeah.
Even though you're looking at somebody, you lose the social interaction. in my
Have you
opinion.
played any other tabletop ones like Vampire Masquerade? That's a real big one. That was real popular.
Yeah, I
Or-
played that a long time ago. I
and
haven't
then-
played it here anywhere
and
recently.
then now have you isn't Pathfinder like
Yeah,
another
Pathfinder is
version
basically when D&D decided to go to 4th edition, Paizo decided to take Pathfinder, because it was open source.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they basically made D&D 3.75 is
I
what
got you.
everybody called it.
Yeah,
And it's basically that's what it is, 3.5, because nobody liked 4th edition. We don't talk about 4th edition.
yeah, right.
Do you recall the Renaissance costume I made?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was
I
half
actually based that after the wizard out of Pathfinder.
I was half expecting you to wear it today.
Oh, now, the artwork and it's done.
I don't know if I
It's-
still fit in it.
Oh, yeah,
It's awesome. I mean, I loved Pathfinder. That's what we went to. We played Pathfinder for the longest time.
Yeah.
Until
5th edition
5th
come out.
edition, and
Yeah.
and I actually got in on some early play tests, and got to actually play games with Mike Merles at
Right.
Gen Con, who at the time was the lead designer, and and that was awesome to be able to get that feeling up front. And I was like, oh man, this has an old school feel to it. I said, this more feels like, because I'm a 2nd edition guy. I mean, I love my Thaco. Everybody hates that, but I love my Thaco. But
Well, you mentioned the art side of it.
Now,
That-
now you said these are
yeah.
3D printed, right?
yeah, all these are
Yeah,
3D
These
printed.
are things that he created, and I've never.
Do you mind if I take a look at this?
No, go ahead.
That's pretty
I've
awesome.
never.
Yeah, that's a
gotten
Fat
into
Dragon Games model there.
Making a lot of minis, but I've done a ton of terrain.
Oh yeah.
I love making terrain, and man, when it comes to art, this will take you into so many different skills and
Oh
directions.
yeah, and you don't have to be a great artist to be a great painter.
Oh.
It's all about practice.
right.
And of course, art's
Everything.
the same thing. You know,
I've always
you know,
said that to everybody.
You know, it's the more you do it, the better you're going to
Yeah,
get.
I'm not better than you. I've just had more practice. That's what I've
Exactly.
always said.
You know, and here's an example. There's a guy. I mean, he wins awards with his miniature painting.
Right.
And he'd been doing it, I think at the time I took a class with him, about 6 years. And he showed me his first one, and it looked like something a second grader painted. You know, and then he showed me, he said, and he showed me several. He kept like one a year.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And the progression, and he keeps them in a box. And when he teaches classes, he sets that box out. He said, this is me when I first started.
Yeah.
He said, this is me now.
Yeah, I really like the way you painted that beholder.
You know, and the type of paints you use can have an effect. That's what they call contrast paints. And it's almost like a wash
Right. Yeah.
and a glaze combined, because you put it on there and it basically tints the undercoat and it leaves the highlights. It kind of sinks into the red.
I love a good wash. It will just magically.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll pull like if you have different colors, it'll pull them all up.
It
unifies
ties
them,
and unifies everything
Right.
together. Yeah. And that's the thing. I'm going to teach a little class here later on how to get into started.
So
and it doesn't cost a bunch
So
of money.
did you have we said where we're at, the Paul Sawyer
No, we're at
Public
Paul
Li-
Sawyer Library, and today they're
In
actually
Frankfort,
having-
Kentucky.
In Frankfort, Kentucky. We're actually at the sales swap and
Mini swap.
mini swap.
Yeah, it's posted on their website.
Yeah.
So you have that yearly, monthly?
Well,
Quarterly?
we're going to pick it up. Like during COVID, it was like really hard to do anything here because they didn't want the library open at all.
Right.
But now they've started. We were having RPG days or game days.
Yeah.
And we did that like every 4 months, I think, for a while. And we had a lot of people show up. We do sign-ups on there. I actually ran do you remember when Wendy's came out with that RPG? The restaurant Wendy's actually came out with an RPG.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's basically based on, you know, and it was the funniest thing. I mean, they're using, you know, all the orders were, you know, like order the fries, order the burger, you know, it was all this stuff. And when you roll a 20, you know, you're supposed to yell feast mode, you know. And I ran that adventure, and we had more fun.
Yeah.
And actually went in and customized some models where I had one guy with a great big giant spatula, you know, the wizard had I think a fork, big giant fork, and had another one with a spoon, you know, and just kind of tried to customize the miniatures, change their weapons.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that's what they were playing with.
Right.
You know, we had such a blast with that. And I mean, I think a lot of other companies ought to do that. They ought to partner with, you know, somebody, and they can theme something
Right.
towards that, and just make it fun.
Yeah.
I mean, because that was just like a one-shot thing, and everybody sat down. It's you can be serious or as funny as you want to with it.
And I mean, and the thing is that pretty much any IP has a role-playing game. You know,
Oh, yeah,
Star Wars has one, Star Trek Adventures.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's one for Game of Thrones. I mean, so, you know, whatever you're interested in, there's probably something role-playing
It's
that goes along with
multi-genre.
it.
I would love to go to a Gen Con. I can imagine.
You haven't been to
it.
Gen Con?
No.
Oh, dude, it's like gamer crack.
I can imagine.
I've been going since 2004
Now,
up
do you,
there. Now
do
we
you
have.
sign up for games or?
Yeah. The best time we ever had, they did the 50th anniversary up there.
Okay.
My whole family went. We all signed up for games. And we had more fun because I used to run the Kentucky Fried Games. That's how we got started. We used to run, I think it was 2006 or 7. I think it was 2006. That one of the guys on forum, he was like, Kentucky Fried Gamers Unite. And I'm like, okay, let's run with that. Let's start a group.
Yeah.
And that's the three of us decided to run games the Wednesday before Gen Con at a local restaurant. The Ram, which is no longer there, unfortunately. But we actually ran games in the back room there from like 9 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m. You know, it'd be 2 sessions, you know, 2 4-hour sessions, RPGs or board games or card games or whatever you wanted to bring and play. And we did that for 13 years. And then it got to be more work. I mean, my kids were getting older, my partner's kids were getting older, and it basically just went down to 2 of us, my best friend and I. And when it became and we always said when it becomes more work than fun, we're done.
Right.
You know, so we quit. I think it was 2 years before the 50th, and we kept the KFG. Said if you're going to run games, you just call it. And these guys came in. They're the refried gamers, you know, which was kind of funny because we always had a redneck theme going.
Ain't nothing wrong with redneck. We're from Kentucky.
Hey.
Everybody's from redneck.
That's right.
We,
Shoes are optional.
anybody that's ever on our show, we always give them a T-shirt, and I want to make sure you got one. And they're very rare.
Yeah, they are.
But anyway,
Well, awesome. Thank you.
yeah, I know.
Really
No,
do
thank you.
appreciate you coming
Right.
on and being a part of this. I mean, your amount of knowledge subsedes
Absolutely.
mine and his, and we've been at this for a little bit.
Yeah, I think they
no,
said. I
it's
think they said we got 10 minutes left before
Okay.
they start. But what as far as the giveaway do you have?
Are there any other quick questions you want?
Not that
Any
I can
topics
think
that you wanted to
of.
touch
No,
on?
we can sit here and talk all day.
Oh, we could.
I think they're
I
going
guarantee it.
to shut us down here in a little bit.
So I brought a few miniatures.
So to be eligible for the giveaway, you just got to be a subscriber and comment down in the comment section. And so what you got, brother? I'll show you what I got.
I brought some dice. Of course, you got to have your dice.
Got to.
You got a dice holder, which is actually a mimic. This is just
That's
cute
cool.
as all
It
get
holds the
out.
dice?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
opens up and it's got the tongue
Yeah,
and
that's
the
a
tongue and
that's a
everything.
that's a
While
classic.
you're talking, I'm gonna do that.
I grabbed a couple of miniatures, and what we'll do is we'll actually surprise you all. I'll
Oh.
purchase one of the bronze miniatures and send it to you.
Cool.
But this is a couple miniatures I picked up at our local
I like it.
game shop.
Let's see. I've got also we'll be adding Dungeons and Dragons as a B movie, and I liked it. Of course,
I
you know.
enjoyed it. I was entertained.
It's not Lord of the Rings, but it's very entertaining. So it's Dungeons and Dragons: Wrath of the Dragon God. We'll be adding that DVD in. And if you're a gamer and you haven't seen this movie, that's a shame. It's come out in 2003. It was made by gamers. It's a fan film called The Gamers. And it's hilarious. And so if you haven't seen it, I recommend you watch it. And if you win, you'll have it. So
You got any websites or anything you want to direct people towards in case they want to?
If you're doing 3D printing, I'd say Fat Dragon Games is probably, because his stuff doesn't require support. You can print it on an FDM printer,
Right.
and they look awesome. He's a great guy. They got a great community on Facebook. But yeah, just do a search for Fat Dragon Games, and I mean, he'll get if you're looking to get started into it,
Right.
that's where you need to go. I mean, they got a great community. I mean, hundreds of people in there.
thanks, Ron, man. I appreciate it, brother.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
Hey,
No,
are you
thank
done?
Are you done?
Okay, all right,
Put a
man.
fork in us, we're done.
I think we're done.
So basically, on resin printing, what it does is you got a bed here, and it comes down, it goes in resin, and it shines in UV light and cures some of the resin. Then it pulls up. There's like what they call an FEP sheet. It's a clear plastic sheet, and it pulls up. And if you get too much, that's why I got holes in these to kind of help alleviate some of the pressure. But it was the type of resin I was using,